Imagine paying $1 million for an apartment knowing that one day the government will knock on your door and take it back. No payout, no compensation, just a polite letter telling you your time is up. That's not a dystopian thought experiment. That's happening right now in Singapore. In 2025 alone, over 100 government-built apartments sold for more than $1 million each. Not luxury condos, not penthouses, public housing, the kind that's supposed to be affordable. And every single one of them is on a 99-year countdown to zero. That's the part most people don't realize. When you buy one of these homes, you're not buying property. You're buying time. When the clock runs out, the apartment doesn't belong to you anymore. It goes straight back to the state. You don't get your money back. You don't get relocated automatically. You just leave. So the obvious question is, why are people lining up to spend 7 figures on something designed to expire? What makes this even stranger is that Singapore is constantly praised as a housing success story. Over 90% of citizens own their homes. The government controls almost all the land. About 80% of the population lives in public housing. Other countries send delegations to study this system like it's the gold standard. On paper, it looks unbeatable, no slums, high ownership, strong social stability. But under the surface, something is clearly breaking. Young people can't afford homes. Prices keep climbing even though everyone knows these homes decay in value. And the entire system is quietly running on a timer nobody wants to talk about. To understand how this happened, you have to go back to the beginning. When Singapore became independent in the 1960s, housing conditions were bad. Really bad. Overcrowded slums, unsafe buildings, families crammed into tiny spaces without basic sanitation. The government at the time, led by Lee Kuan Yew, decided that incremental fixes wouldn't work, so they did something radical. They made housing a state project. The government acquired around 90% of the land through a mix of colonial-era arrangements, compulsory purchases, and massive land reclamation projects. Then they created the Housing Development Board, or HDB, to build apartments at scale. To pay for it, they expanded the Central Provident Fund, forcing workers to save part of their income and allowing that money to be used to buy these homes. The state controlled the land, built the housing, and controlled the financing, and for decades, it worked. Home ownership exploded. Families who had lived in slums suddenly owned clean, modern apartments. A middle class emerged almost overnight. From the outside, it looked like a miracle. And for a long time, it really was. But there was always a condition attached. These homes were never meant to be owned forever. Every HDB flat comes with a 99-year lease. When that lease expires, the flat goes back to the government. That wasn't hidden. It was right there in the paperwork. It just didn't feel important. 99 years sounds like forever when you're young. If you buy a flat in your 30s, you'll be long gone by the time the lease ends. So people shrugged it off. The problem is that housing markets don't think in lifetimes. They think in timelines. And that's where things start to fall apart. At first, the lease doesn't matter. When a flat is new, prices are strong. Banks are happy to lend. Everyone treats it like normal property. But once the remaining lease drops to around 60 years, things change. Banks start tightening loans. Buyers face restrictions on how much of their retirement savings they can use. The pool of eligible buyers shrinks. At 40 years left, most banks won't touch it. Buyers can't get normal mortgages. At 30 years, resale becomes almost impossible. And at 0, the flat is taken back by the state. No negotiation, no payout. It's over. This isn't theory. In 2020, nearly 200 homes in the Geylang area reached the end of their leases. Owners received notices telling them to vacate. Their homes reverted to the government. Decades of accumulated wealth vanished. Different housing category, same legal structure. That's the future every 99-year lease is moving toward. Now, the oldest public housing blocks are approaching that danger zone. And for the first time, people are starting to panic. Some owners are hoping the government will step in through a program called SIRS, where selected blocks are bought back and redeveloped, and owners are given new flats. It sounds comforting, but only about 5% of buildings are ever chosen. There's no guarantee, no entitlement, no appeal. Government officials have been blunt about this. Most flats will not be saved. When the lease ends, it ends. So here's the part that really matters. If everyone knows these homes eventually become worthless, why are prices still exploding? The answer goes back to one policy change that quietly rewired the entire system. Originally, public housing wasn't meant to be an investment. You couldn't sell your flat on the open market. If you moved, you sold it back to the government at a depreciated price. You paid for shelter, used it, and moved on. That kept prices stable and predictable. Then, in the 1970s, the government opened up the resale market. Owners were allowed to sell their flats to anyone, at any price. That single decision changed everything. Suddenly, location mattered more than lease age. An older flat near a subway station became more valuable than a brand new flat far away. Neighborhoods like Toapayo started seeing hundreds of million-dollar transactions. Public housing stopped being just housing. It became a financial asset. Fast forward to today, a $1 million public housing flat with 80-plus years left on the lease means monthly payments of around $4,000 to $5,000 for decades. That's close to half the median household income for government housing. In some recent years, public housing prices rose faster than private luxury condos. Think about that. The apartments designed to keep housing affordable became better investments than actual luxury real estate. If you're a young couple today, you're stuck between two bad options. You can apply for a subsidized new flat and wait 3 to 5 years, assuming you even win the lottery. Or you can buy resale immediately and pay full market price. The gap between subsidized prices and resale prices can be hundreds of thousands of dollars. That gap doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from younger buyers transferring wealth to older ones. This is where the system starts to contradict itself. Singapore loves to point to its high home ownership rate as proof of equality. But ownership alone doesn't mean fairness. Timing matters more than effort. People who bought in the 70s and 80s paid tens of thousands. Today, their flats are worth many times that. Younger buyers are paying dramatically more for the same thing, with similar incomes. Same country, same rules, completely different outcomes, based almost entirely on when you were born. The second contradiction is control without restraint. The government owns the land, builds the flats, sets the rules, and still allows public housing to be traded like a speculative asset. Some people even own multiple public housing units. It's supposed to be a social good, but it behaves like a private investment vehicle. The third contradiction is the subsidy system itself. It rewards patience, not need. If you can wait years and gamble on a lottery, you get cheaper housing. If you need a home now, you pay full price. The people who benefited from subsidies in the past are now sitting on assets that younger buyers have to overpay for. The government keeps trying to cool the market with technical fixes. Higher down payments, loan limits, longer waiting periods. None of it addresses the core problem. You can't have housing be both an affordable necessity and a wealth-building investment. Those goals fight each other. Singapore chose investment, and now it's stuck with the consequences. The ripple effects are already showing. Birth rates are falling. Young people delay marriage and children because owning a home is culturally expected and financially out of reach. And this isn't just a Singapore problem. Hong Kong, Seoul, different systems, same outcome. Housing became financialized. Young people absorbed the cost. Singapore could change course. It could build more aggressively, restrict speculation, create a serious rental market where not owning doesn't feel like failure. But doing that would reduce property values, and homeowners vote. For decades, the promise was simple. Buy a home, and it will make you wealthier over time. Breaking that promise would be politically explosive. So the countdown continues. The $1 million flats being sold today will eventually be worth nothing. Not because of a crash, not because of bad policy, but because of math. 99 years runs out for everyone. Singapore did something incredible. It eliminated slums and gave almost everyone a home. But somewhere along the way, housing stopped being about shelter and started being about wealth. Now the system quietly transfers money from young buyers to older owners, while pretending everything is fine. The real question isn't whether the system is broken. That's obvious. The question is what happens when an entire generation realizes that the most expensive thing they'll ever buy was never designed to last. Because that 99-year clock isn't just ticking on individual apartments. It's ticking on the entire idea that this system can hold together forever. And nobody really knows what happens when it hits zero,